Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I was just pausing to make sure that everybody that was waiting to get in on Zoom was with us. It looks like we've got a nice crowd with us tonight. So good evening and welcome. My name is Claire Levy. I have the honor of chairing the Board of County Commissioners for 2023. And I want to welcome everyone to our first town hall meeting for 2023. Some of you may know that we've been doing these meetings on an almost monthly basis now for the last year. And over the summer, we were able to do some in person. We're going to do several here virtually during the cold weather when it's dark and traveling is a little more difficult. And then we'll be back in person, and we'll tell you more about that at the end of the evening. But I did want to welcome everyone, and what you'll see on the screen in front of you is instructions for how to get into the Spanish language interpretation if you're more comfortable using Spanish. And so I think those instructions are pretty self-explanatory. You're going for the little globe symbol in the bottom of the screen, and then you're going to click on that and then click on the language of your choice. It's our pleasure again, let me say, to be with you tonight. Former Mayor Ashley Stolzmann, now Commissioner Stolzmann, and Marta Loachamin. And we're going to start by each of us just giving some thoughts about the past year and what we hope to work on in the future. And then we'll open this meeting up for public comment. We have some people that have signed up in advance, and we've set aside 3 minutes a person for public comment. If you didn't sign up in advance, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll get you set up to speak in the public comment section. And then we also are hoping that there's going to be time to take questions. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, you can see an icon for Q&A, and if you'll type your question in there, then we will take that after we do public comment. So I'm just going to start us off, and I'm starting my 3rd year as a county commissioner, and so I've had the pleasure of speaking with many of you in the past and responding to correspondence, but I saw some new faces, and I'm always happy to be able to talk to new people here. Last year, we did have a very successful, I thought, combination of in-person and remote town halls. We were able to get out to Lyons, Nederland, Coal Creek Canyon, Lafayette, Gun Barrel, El Dorado Springs, and Jamestown in person. And we'll be trying to make the rounds again this year because it's always great to see people in their communities. We also were able to have dinner with the governing bodies of some of the municipalities in Boulder County. We met with Longmont, Superior, and Erie over dinner, and heard a little bit more in an in-depth conversation from them. And that was a great opportunity to just build relationships and hear in an informal setting what's on people's minds. So the things that really dominated what I worked on in the last year really has to start with the Marshall Fire response. That was obviously a disaster of just unprecedented scale here in Boulder County, and just amazingly tragic. And I was very proud of how our staff immediately responded and set up the Disaster Assistance Center. We were able to serve a lot of people in a short period of time, providing financial support, referrals to mental health, to Department of Motor Vehicles to get your driver's license, had folks there to help get passports and other ID. That was a major effort on the part of the county very quickly. We then immediately started working on drafting some new regulations so that people who wanted to rebuild did not have to go through the regular land use process. we drafted those after a series of listening sessions. We worked on special rules for accessory dwelling units in the Marshall Fire Burn area, set up a system to rebate a portion of sales and use taxes for people rebuilding, marshaled a lot of resources to support green building, and the statistics on the number of people who are pursuing low energy net and net zero passive homes is really impressive, and really happy to see that that we're going to get that out of this terrible disaster. And then, of course, passing fire resistant building codes for Boulder County so that we can at least lessen the destruction if we have another fire like that in the future. I'm just going to highlight a couple of other major things that were highlights for me in 2022. I mean, one was finalizing the projects that we're going to invest in with the $63.3 million that we got from the federal government through ARPA. It's just a once in a lifetime opportunity to make major investments in the community and try to really move the needle on the things that people said they needed help with. And that's mental health, it's housing affordability, it's economic assistance. And I'm looking forward to seeing those projects come to fruition. We passed a series of gun violence prevention ordinances. One of them is being challenged in court and has been suspended until that court case is finished, but the others are in effect. And we're hoping that that, along with the gun violence prevention ordinances that municipalities have passed, will help reduce gun violence and increase public safety. We made a major decision to close down the Dow Flats Quarry, a source of a lot of particulate pollution over the years. And I'm very pleased that we were able to do that. We have put the pieces in place to get the Willoughby Corners housing, affordable housing project off the ground in Lafayette, and hoping that the rest of the financing for that can work out and give us 400 plus units of affordable housing of all types in Lafayette. And that's going to be a major project for Boulder County Housing Authority. Along those lines, we were able to open the Spoke on Kaufman, which is an affordable housing project we did in Longmont in conjunction with the city of Longmont. Two other things I'll mention. Ohio Valley Ranch suffered a lot of damage during the Calwood fire in 2021, and we did a lot of work on rehab in Ohio Ranch, and it's open, and I hope that people are getting up there and enjoying Ohio Valley Ranch again. We had to close it during that period. In 2023, again, Marshall Fire work. We're going to assist people who are rebuilding to the best that we can. And we know that it has not been perfect. It has not been smooth for everybody, but this is something that I personally am committed to. And I enjoy the opportunity to be a liaison between the residents of unincorporated Boulder County and our planning department, our other departments that are involved with rebuilding. We'll be working on services for people with behavioral health and substance use disorders, including addressing the opioid settlement funds and making decisions on how to distribute those funds so that we can get ahead of the crisis of addiction that we have in our community. Along those lines, we're looking for opportunities to expand our co-responder program and to expand access to behavioral health services so that you don't have to get into the criminal justice system in order to be served. On the legislative front, we're expecting major legislation that will try to do a better job of coordinating land use decisions and transportation funding so that we use our transportation resources more efficiently so that we can bring down the cost of housing and also lessen the impact on water resources, air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, et cetera. That's going to be a major part of our work. Another major focus for us will be getting adequate funding for our human services caseworkers. They're doing a lot of work. They're under a lot of strain. They are not compensated adequately. And so we're going to bat for them at the legislature to get more funding. I'll just mention a couple of other things quickly on housing. Again, Willoughby Corner, we're going to turn some dirt here very soon on the first phase. And that will be an ongoing project for several years. We have a new division of housing in our Department of Human Services, and I'm looking forward to working with that division to address a broader range of housing issues than we can do through our housing authority, including preserving existing affordable housing and addressing the needs for affordable home ownership. Implementing our new ballot issues, primarily 1A and B, are going to be a major part of our work. And then I'll just mention one other issue, and it's not a county issue yet. It may not ever be a county issue, but there are some things that find their way to each of us that we take on because it reflects a concern that we have. And I've been trying to find opportunities to intervene and address the impending closure of assisted living of one of our Medicaid funded facilities here in the city of Boulder. It's a tragic situation. It is causing families to have to scramble and make arrangements for loved ones who have very few options available to them. This may be a legislative need, but we're going to have to pull together to make sure that people in our communities who need assisted living and who do not have access to the resources needed for the expensive market rate facilities have the services they need. So those are just the things I wanted to highlight from what we've done in the past and what I hope to do in the future. And I'm going to now turn it over to Commissioner Loachamin.
Great. Want to start this. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this virtual town hall. And we'll be looking forward to the spring and some more, what's the best way to say, potentially predictable weather that'll allow us to be out and about in Boulder County. So a couple, we should have shared notes. I'm going to try and not repeat what Commissioner Levy just talked about, but I'll add a couple pieces in. You know, looking at 2022, Marshall Fire was an extraordinary amount of work and dedication, and just want to share gratitude really to Boulder County staff who in every department, people were doing different types of work from the very beginning, December 30th, 2021, throughout the year in different ways. And so really want to commend everybody who has been involved in all of the different response, and we're moving into more of the recovery when we talk about rebuilding. Two pieces within that work that I think are really important. One is the commitment from Boulder County as an organization in looking at equitable outcomes and how we look at racial equity, even in the work that's done in the rebuild with Marshall Fire. I got an opportunity to work with the long-term recovery group, and now working with the Marshall Rock and our recovery team at Boulder County. And so that also gives us an opportunity to look at our emergency preparedness, our disaster recovery, and really some legislative work on how we can get the state to help us be prepared for natural disasters or disasters that happen in our community. One of the other pieces in 2022 that was really what became a function of our complete budget process was the reality that, as many of you, our staff were also facing the rising costs, day-to-day living costs, and also inflation. And so it was really a decision of the board to put in place first and look at how we could address compensation, benefits, and other ways to be able to retain our staff, but also to be able to recruit in what's not a surprise for folks, the workforce issues that we have been facing here in Boulder County, state of Colorado, and really globally. So that was an opportunity for us to bring up in June a $200 raise to our employees, and then we made a decision to keep that moving in 2023 to provide some relief. Another piece for us was the opening or the reopening of the hearing room that happened in October, which really was only 3 months ago. And so that's given us an opportunity to do hybrid work, and we'll continue to do that as we work on engaging and adding additional ways of community engagement, of receiving input, ideas, concerns, et cetera, from residents. And Commissioner Levy already talked about the continued work on ARPA. And so moving into 2023, that'll be one of the pieces. The next one will be our Thrive and Survive grants. As far as the money has, the majority of the money, there's about 600,000 of that 63.3 million that hasn't been spoken for or allocated. But this next grant process will be a really great opportunity for us to address the economic challenges and what that working group brought forward to the board as we continue that work. A couple of the other pieces just moving forward for 2023, really from my perspective and my goal in my work is how do we intertwine racial equity because we know that race is the predictor of outcomes for residents in Boulder County and elsewhere. How do we incorporate that into the work that we're doing around economic development, about the workforce shortage and the work I'm doing with the workforce Boulder County Board? How do we continue in our housing advocacy to work with our policy team in addressing some of the goals that our own governor here in Colorado has of attacking the root causes of the housing crisis in Colorado. So we are involved in that and working on that as well. Let's see here, one of those, I'm trying not to repeat some of the ones that Commissioner Levy said, but we'll continue this year also in outside of the gun violence prevention ordinances, but continue to elevate the education, the programming, and other legislation that's moving forward alongside our policy team. Another one is the tax measures that Commissioner Levy mentioned on 1A and 1B. 1A is specific around wildfire mitigation, and we had a beginning of some community outreach, really focusing with groups that are already doing forestry work. Some of the partners with the Boulder Fireshed, I had an opportunity to work with that group and the NOCO Places 2050 for the last 2 years, and we'll be shifting that work over, but we want to make sure that other community organizations and groups have an opportunity to be part of that process with the generous support of Boulder County voters that allowed that $9.5 million to come in specific for wildfire mitigation. The other one will be continued work on 1B, which is emergency services. We have not yet started that process just because of the end of the year and holidays, et cetera. So for folks looking at how can I get involved, that is one to look at. That also is a $9.5 million tax ballot measure that will be bringing community folks together and putting together a committee, and all the formation of that has not started yet. So that's an opportunity outside of the other commissions and boards that Boulder County has, and we really rely on folks' expertise and community voices to support the work that we do in the hearing room at the Boulder Courthouse. The other one is climate justice and how we address the issues of not just climate disasters, but also how do we, with the policy work that we're doing, with the amazing work that our Office of Sustainability, Climate Action, and Resilience is involved in. Last year we approved the hiring of a climate equity specialist. And so I'm really looking forward this year to be able to work in conjunction with that team to really address environmental justice in Boulder County. And we can also do that at a policy level as we continue. I'm sure some folks may have seen the air quality and aviation gases a document that went out earlier. I think it was today, if not in the last 24 hours. And so that's one of the other pieces. And really, other than that is the day-to-day work and opportunity for you to be involved with public comment in these types of events, to sign up on the advanced agenda, to be in the know about what Boulder County is doing. I truly believe that we have a significant opportunity to continue to open the doors of Boulder County as an organization to our residents now when we're not in crisis, to help people be aware of the programs and the resources, the exorbitant amount of opportunity that we have with funding from ARPA, state, federal, and here locally. And so that's one of the pieces that I encourage people to get involved in and come and see us at the courthouse or come and join us at the town halls. And also, I just want to say thank you to the staff at Boulder County. It's been very humbling to meet folks in different departments, in different areas, who work with other elected officials and work with our department heads. 2022 was another tough year to be in the front lines of public service. And they did a fantastic job. And so part of my role from the administration side is just to continue to ask, how can I support Boulder County staff so that they can be present for all of you as Boulder County residents. And so with that, I would love to turn it over to our newly elected Commissioner, Ashley Stolzmann, to share a little bit about what plans are for 2023 as well.
Thank you so much, commissioners. Very great job. Tough act to follow. Thank you so much. I just want to start out by just thanking the community for the opportunity to serve. First and foremost, it's awesome to see so many friendly names in the list here at the town hall, and really look forward to meeting the folks that I don't yet know. It's been really tough in our county, right? We're coming off of a global pandemic, a mass shooting, historic fires. Like, it's been a really tough time. And it's one of those things where you wonder, would a community become battle worn from all of that? And what I've seen is our community has really become battle tested, battle tried, and ready to band together. And I'm just inspired by community members every day, by how much I see neighbors helping one another, community members lifting up each other's voices, people really working to make life better for the next generation and make things better. And that inspiration from all of you is what drives me to do what I do each day, and try to make life better as well. So thank you for what all of you have done through this really trying time. And it really sets the stage for what we can all do together going forward and how we can become more resilient. And resiliency, resilient, that's one of those words that gets thrown around a lot. And it's something that I really believe in Boulder County, our community embraces and our staff embrace. And you see that through things like the ballot measure that was passed. I want to thank the commissioners for working so hard on those ballot measures and putting them forward for the community, because that is to make us stronger together. That is so we can have a comprehensive mitigation and response plan for emergencies and disasters. And so that we can continue on, with our transportation funding. If folks wouldn't have done those, important investments in our infrastructure and in each other, we would be in a much worse situation going forward. So thank you to the community for supporting those, and thank you to the previous commission for working so hard to put those measures out there for the community so that we can build a wildfire response plan together, the community wildfire preparedness plan. It's up for renewal so that we can work together to address the many issues we've heard from people in Marshall, from dispatch to issues with mitigation on ditches, to issues with other mitigation, to response. I mean, there's so many great lessons learned from community, and this will enable us to come up with a comprehensive response and start to work on those things together. So thank you all for passing those things. Thank you very much to the other commissioners for the warm welcome. It's just been no time lost. Even though I've only been on a few short days, I'm just impressed with, how everything's clicking, how fast we're working on things. Hopefully folks saw the response sign-on that we did for leaded aviation fuel. So everything from leaded aviation fuel to emergency management training that we had together to look at what we've already seen Office of Emergency Management under the sheriff do with dispatch improvements, to state partnerships, to climate work, to we have upcoming some unhoused conversations that we're having. It's a myriad of a variety of topics, right? And that's what's so interesting about county government, because it touches people's lives in so many ways. So we're really here tonight to hear from you, so we can better understand what issues you might want to dialogue with us about, raise, bring to our attention, so that we can bring it into our work and see where we can go with it and how we can continue to make life better. And then I guess I'll just end with, we can't always do everything as a local government, but we're here to listen. We're here to learn from everybody and see what we can do together and how we can make those partnerships and support one another. So I just look forward to hearing from folks. And thank you so much for the warm welcome, Commissioner Levy and Commissioner Loachamin.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both for your remarks, and I'll just publicly welcome you, Commissioner Stolzmann, to the Boulder County Commissioners. And we're thrilled to have you, and somebody with your experience as mayor of Louisville, and before that on the Louisville City Council. You bring a lot of experience, and you've already shown that just in the week plus that you've been a commissioner. So now we're going to open it up for public comment, and we had several people sign up in advance. If you didn't have a chance to sign up, as I said earlier, just go ahead and raise your hand and we can put you in the queue. The way we'll do this is I'll just read the first three names. We have Erin Meshke, I think it is, Deborah Cave, and Megan Monroe. Those are the first three names. Oh, there we go. It's right up there in the chat. And you'll get a message promoting you to panelists. Just go ahead and accept, and then be sure you unmute your microphone. And we will be holding people to 3 minutes to the extent we can. I'm not going to cut you off in the middle of a sentence because we do want to hear from you. And so with that, I will look and see in my gallery view when we are ready to have our first person unmute, and that would be Erin.
Hello, commissioners and community members. I thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Erin Meshkian. I'm a Boulder resident. I had offered comment in August, similar to what I will say this evening, but I feel it important to reemphasize these thoughts as we begin 2023, especially since climate change was cited as an important issue by all three commissioners during the annual reorganization meeting. While there is a loud group claiming there is a consensus on this issue, the science is far from settled, with well-known scientists and researchers landing on opposite ends of the spectrum. Climate sensationalism needs to be avoided, or Boulder County will end up looking as ridiculous as the Chicken Littles of the past few decades who said our demise was imminent, only to have time continue to march on in a mostly unscathed fashion. As a starting point, we need to call the problem what it is: pollution. Pollution comes in many forms, and the big industries mentioned in the commissioner's August EPA petition email cannot be the only scapegoats. We must also address the invisible forms of pollution like satellites, cellular and EMF radiation, geoengineering, cloud seeding, and other types of environmental and weather tampering. If we won't look at these other invisible issues, we are missing a big piece of the puzzle that could be causing increased wildfires and other weather changes. Massive telecommunications companies have largely escaped the pollution discussion, and their part must be addressed because while invisible, their effects on wildlife and pollinators have been witnessed since the early 20th century. While the impact of pollution from big oil and energy companies is real, the everyday impact of people consuming more and more disposable products cannot be ignored and is actually driving some of these industries. This habit of waste was reinforced and intensified during the pandemic, and it will take work and possibly regulation to undo this damage. We must all look at our contribution to the problem and work for change. If we are going to talk about increasing fires, more heat days, extreme weather, and drought, we must also discuss the impact of piping water to Colorado from Colorado to the West Coast. Surely losing some of Colorado's precious water supply has an impact on our local weather. This is not solely a Boulder County issue, but as part of Colorado, we must preserve and protect all of our natural resources and not allow them to be used, sold, or exploited for financial gain. I would like to again offer a suggestion that I believe could help on the climate and pollution fronts. In the August email, it said, Boulder County is committed to supporting nature-based and engineered solutions that remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The best way to allow the ground to absorb more carbon is by regeneratively and rotationally raising animals on pasture. Boulder County could begin working with more local farmers and have incentives for people who want to get into raising animals properly. Rotating livestock in private fields and on public lands not only helps the ground retain more moisture when it rains, but also helps build topsoil and allows more carbon to be absorbed. Much of Colorado's land cannot raise plant crops, but could be put to work, helping to naturally solve our pollution problem, make lands more vibrant, and even control noxious weeds so BOCC can stop spraying harmful chemicals on open spaces. I believe the simplest solution found in animals being raised the way they were intended, not in factory farms that contribute to the problem, which I oppose, but in happy cows, goats, sheep, bison, buffalo, pigs, chickens, and other animals living their best life on our public lands. We must resist the propagandizing of pollution and realize getting back to basics is the real solution. Other measures, inventions, innovations, and ideas can be pursued, but if we ignore this simple, elegant, ancestral solution, our virtue signaling will be obvious. Thank you for your time.
All right. Did you want to finish a sentence there?
The only thing I had left to say was thank you for your time.
Okay, you timed it perfectly. Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. Okay, the next person is Deborah Cave. I did see Deborah in our participant list.
I did just.
Oh, there we
sign
go. Yeah. There you are. Okay, yeah, go ahead and give us your comments.
Okay, and I'll try and talk quickly, and I appreciate the chance to talk tonight. My name is Deborah Cave. We lost our home in the Paragon Hills area to the Marshall Fire. I'm also the chair of the unincorporated Boulder County Committee, known as UBCC, formed after the fire to advocate for our community during the cleanup and rebuilding process. Our committee has been meeting weekly for the past year, so about 52 times so far, to address all the issues that our families face during the rebuild process. We've been very lucky to have the support of several county officials who've also given up their Friday afternoons to help both identify and address issues as they arise, including Gary Sanfacone, Boulder County Disaster Recovery Manager, Commissioner Claire Levy, and Mike Chard, OEM Director. Without their knowledge, contacts, and support, we would not have been as successful as we have been in many areas that we've tackled for our community. One of the primary concerns for our residents is fire risk mitigation. Our committee worked with OSMP in April 2022 timeframe to write a grant addressing the need for fire mitigation efforts and maintenance along the ditches. The ditches, which crisscross our area, acted as a linear super spreader for the fire, and they hadn't even been discussed by other Boulder County entities around the April 2022 timeframe. Unfortunately, our grant application was denied, and the primary reason for the denial was because our area was not located in as high a fire danger zone as other areas associated with that requested grants. Besides this decision being ludicrous as well as dangerous, it was the first time that I really understood the historical differentiation for fire preparedness that is implemented in the foothills versus in the grasslands WUI area, and the critical need for change in this historical mindset. We have community members who are frightened to rebuild an unincorporated area, and if they're assured that the county is willing to develop a comprehensive wildfire mitigation and preparedness plan, I think that this will go a long way to address their concerns. We identified the need for this approach 10 months ago, and we've been pushing for it ever since. However, it's really difficult to make headway on the concept because of the fragmented nature of the different entities in Boulder County who are tasked with different areas of fire mitigation. This is the overarching issue for our community. We had several committee members who were concerned about supporting 1A because of the vagueness of how the monies would be spent, including the distribution of those monies between the foothills and grasslands regarding fire mitigation issues. And we actually still have that concern. We're requesting the following be considered by the commissioners, that we really need honest community input from fire survivors in determining how the monies should be spent. Since we've already been doing this process for the past year, it would be very straightforward for our committee to submit a summary of these types of recommendations.
Time.
Okay, thank you. And Deborah, if you could go ahead and just wrap up.
Okay, thank you. And I'll talk quicker, sorry. We really are, we're requesting transparency on how the monies will be distributed. It's actually too late for community input when certain organizations already have been identified to receive funds. This could also include matching funds for appropriate grant programs that we will be needing to apply for fire mitigation, acknowledgement of the need to change the historic mindset of what the fire mitigation preparedness should look like, And again, and really critical, development of a comprehensive wildfire mitigation preparedness plan and the designation of someone to lead this group. Thank you so much for the ability, for the time, and for consideration of my comments.
And thank you very much for your comments. And I do want to just acknowledge that we have heard these concerns, and I think we have another speaker who wants to address them as well. And we do intend to do more work on how those funds will be distributed and bringing community voices to the table. So Megan Monroe is our next person. And then after that, we have Pete Salas and Shayna Parker and Pat Clark.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you, County Commissioners, for your time and truly for all that you have done. My name is Megan Monroe. I'm gonna kind of piggyback on what Debbie Cave spoke about. I've been part of the UBC, and I'm gonna just mention or focus on the 1B portion of this. I lived in Marshall and I lost my home and everything in the fire. During the fire, my community quickly realized that water supplies were entirely inadequate for firefighting. It took 30 minutes round trip for a truck to get out and back to Marshall. After the fire, we learned that there was a 27,000 gallon cistern sitting empty at the Marshall Mesa trailhead. We also learned that the single fire hydrant in Marshall was nothing more than a clean out or a pressure release valve. And then to top it off, we've learned that there's a burning coal seam that's being investigated as the potential cause of the fire. This coal seam was not part of site plan reviews in our area, so we don't know what to make of it. And we've also then, final point was, a number of our houses didn't even ignite until after 4 o'clock that night. It wasn't the initial fire that burned a lot of our houses down. So I hope you can understand where a high level of frustration might come from our community. And this is why I've been at the table to try and help build in a resilient way. When the county heard of our situation in Marshall, though, the response was very much, the county doesn't get involved in this, because that's been the status quo. And when Representative Negus's office heard of the situation, he organized a roundtable to start a collaborative effort to better the situation. When the city of Boulder learned of the situation, they filled their 27,000 gallon cistern and applied to a federal grant with our fire district to add another 100,000 gallons of emergency water in the Marshall corridor. The county was asked to support that grant, and my understanding is the commissioners voted against supporting it. I don't know why, I don't know the details, but it is confusing to me that the county is willing to revisit a conversation regarding if paving neighborhood roads is a county service or not, while emergency water in Marshall, a federally declared disaster area in the county, is largely dependent on the city of Boulder being awarded a federal grant. Our community is simply waiting to hear if the city will help prepare us for the next disaster or not. Imagine rebuilding with this on your mind. Would you trust that the county has your best interest at heart? So I'm here to tell you that I voted for 1A and 1B because I see an opportunity for the county to change. I see the opportunity for the county to support the communities, the neighborhoods, and the fire districts who lack adequate emergency water supplies. Why not simply agree that emergency water is fundamental to a basic service, emergency service that firefighting is? This is why I encourage the county to use 1B funds to develop a community cistern fund that would allow fire districts the opportunity to apply for funds to support emergency cisterns where they feel they are needed. 1B is
Time.
Go ahead and wrap up. Thanks.
I just had to say that 1B states that it's for emergency services, including supplemental funding for fire departments. So it seems like there might be a way to allow the county to be involved in emergency water supplies as well. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I do want to just say, Megan, I saw your comments, you sent them in advance, and I was surprised by what was in there about us voting against supporting a grant. And I did ask about that because I don't recall any decision like that coming before us, and did not hear. Nobody knew what that reference was to. The land on which that cistern it sits is city-owned land, and Boulder County is not a water provider, so we don't have a source of water to fill the cistern. City of Boulder has a water utility. But I will look into a little bit more about that concern that we didn't support a grant. I was surprised to see it.
Commissioner Levy, may I just make a few comments? I want to thank everybody for their comments so far, and just want to add a little bit. So one thing I've learned a lot over the last couple of years with response to disasters is it's a layered approach. And so the idea of cisterns and all of these things that'll help layer up our resiliency is important, and that's how we'll get there together. But I just want to remind everybody that, you know, even in the incorporated areas that have water utilities, homes right across from fire hydrants were destroyed in the Marshall Fire. It was a really devastating fire. The wind was over 100 miles an hour. And so I do believe, you know, if we have more layers, we can be more resilient. You could have maybe stopped it earlier. We can do what ifs. But I just want to acknowledge how severe the conditions were, and so we can work together. But what's going to be really hard in working together as a community, and some of the hard conversations we'll have together on the 1A and 1B, is figuring out how to prioritize the funding to go to the things that will help the community the most. And, you know, that will be a community conversation that we'll all work together on. And, you know, how we can do that equitably, consider the impacts on race, consider equity, and really ensure that the investments we make go the longest way for the community. And those are tough conversations. So we'll need everybody to start thinking about those things together so we can get the best outcome. Thanks.
Sure. And, you know, and we can make some comments later about what we hear or respond in the moment. I don't really care how we do that. This is a town hall and there should be some give and take. So I see Pete on the screen here, all unmuted and ready to go.
Good evening, commissioners. First of all, I just want to thank you all for your time and efforts. After having spent 25 years in that office, there are very few people who know more about the trials and tribulations and the work that you all do, and especially the staff that works in your office and how they keep all your stuff together. And I'm very pleased to know that you're considering additional compensation. I think they have been very undercompensated, particularly that staff that applies your administrative work. So just thank you again. I've got 3 things I want to go through very quickly, and hopefully I'll get to them. I'll try not to spend too much time. First is that I've always been concerned about the antiquated way a county does business, having daytime meetings. It worked in the 30s, I guess. It worked some point, but it does not work now. No other unit of government in the county does business during the day when people cannot attend. And I don't care how many town halls you do and your once a month public meetings. I don't believe there's anything equitable or otherwise that merits meetings during the day. I think it's not equitable. I don't think it's inclusive, and I would beg that the commissioners reconsider the process you use to conduct these meetings. Like I said, maybe in the old days it worked okay, but it doesn't work now. And public comment is stifled. It doesn't allow for a lot of things. The other thing, the last thing I want to say about that is that you can do virtual meetings, hybrid meetings, but a lot of us, particularly people of color, are high context communicators, and virtual meetings don't work. Face-to-face contextual meetings are what works and what helps build trust. Virtual hybrid meetings, in my opinion, as an interculturalist and a trainer, they do not build trust, and they still leave a lot to be desired. So I would ask that you reconsider how you manage those. There's another topic very quickly. Is, I tried to go to the county website and find out who the department heads are and division managers, and I can't find them. I can go to the city of Longmont and I can find people who are actually on the ground working. You go to Family Services at Longmont and you can see who's working with kids, who they are. If you want to talk to somebody, you can contact them directly. You can't do that at the county. And I'm not sure why that is, but I don't think it's right. And I don't think it's very transparent. I will remind those of you who don't remember, there was a time when the county actually, city of Boulder County actually published a directory of employees with their contact information. There were phone numbers. It was before internet and before email, but I don't think it's inappropriate to have division managers and department heads have their contact information available for us to contact when we want to do it directly. So I would ask that you reconsider that policy, and that I don't need to know all the people on the ground working, be helpful, but I think at the very least, division managers and department heads ought to be able to have their contact information. I don't need to know where they live or anything, but email addresses and contact information. I had one last thing really quickly, if you don't mind. As some of you know, I head up a networking group called the Boulder County Latino Coalition. And really it's a group to provide opportunities for staff, Latino staff in the county to get together, to interact, to network, share information. And it's just a wonderful thing to do. I bring it up because I've been told by several county employees that they are not allowed to come to these meetings for whatever reason. Maybe it's not in their job description. Maybe the people don't know anything about it, but the people who come to these meetings love to see county employees sharing information about their projects. They don't have to be specific to Latino issues, but I think it's up to you to encourage your department heads and division managers to allow employees to come to networking meetings where they can see what's happening on the ground. These are not department heads. These are people who work on the ground. And as Commissioner Loachamin will tell you, they're an integral part of delivery of service in our communities. And I think it's incumbent upon county employees to attend whenever possible. It will help them grow, and that will help us.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for each of those points. Shana Parker.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome, Ashley. It's wonderful to see a team of 3 women, of course. I'm Shana Parker. I've been a Boulder resident for 33 years. And I appreciate how many priorities are on your plates. And I'm going to add one more. As a small organic farmer advocate, I'd like to see more focus on farmers and ranchers. So there was one comment previously about putting animals on the land to regenerate. That is the kind of direction that I'm talking about. I have looked at the Boulder Comprehensive Plan, the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, the Boulder Sustainability Plan, and the rhetoric is great. And there's so many great things happening in Boulder that are written about in those plans, but the rhetoric in a lot of the local regulations and policies does not translate. So my request is to have those more aligned. So the regulations need to support the farmers in thriving, in producing food, in sequestering carbon, using regenerative farming practices, and being more inclusive of beginning farmers. For me, the question is, how can we best meet this moment of impending climate crisis in which we need to prioritize food sovereignty and avoid a business as usual mindset? We as the taxpayers have already demonstrated our commitment to sustainability by supporting measures that keep our land free of development. What might need to happen now is for us to focus on how best to fund the stewardship of our lands to meet the stated goals, as opposed to just continuing to acquire lands that need to be responsibly managed. A good recent document I have seen produced by the city, the county, and CSU Extension is a survey of farmers entitled Exploring Solutions to Boulder County Agricultural Sector Constraints. And I'm going to put 2 links in the chat when I'm done talking. All the respondent farmer groups selected that their business growth constrained by local policies was one of their major concerns. They were also concerned that the agricultural knowledge of the policymakers was limited. Farmers and ranchers ranked the constraints of infrastructure policies, processing, storage. And the last platform that I'll cite is the Flatirons Farmers Coalition platform. And I'll put those 2 links in the chat. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing how this gets moved forward.
Great, thank you very much for your comments. So the next person on the list is Pat Clare. And I had saw a note in the chat that she was not on the participant list. Let's give her a minute to identify herself. Maybe she's calling in or under a different name.
Hello?
There you are. Okay, is that you?
Yes, hi, my name is Pat Clare. I am a resident of Boulder, and I may speak a little brokenly as I'm using a screen reader in the background, so I may be listening to what I've written at the same time as I'm speaking or in between. Please bear with me. Thank you very much, commissioners. You're doing a great, solid job. And I'm grateful that you are allowing me to share with you today. I wanted to talk a little bit about HB 21-1110, and without speaking to the entire content of this law that was passed by the state of Colorado this past year. I would imagine that you all are familiar with the portion of this new piece of legislation that is intended to provide structure and penalties for web content and accessibility for the specifically Boulder County. It includes all public entities that are housed under the state of Colorado. I have a curiosity, trying not to state it as a question, but I'd love to understand what supports are being added to make Boulder County's website and web content accessible for people with disabilities. I'm curious to know what supports there will be or might be in the works for people with disabilities to learn to meet the provisions of HB 21-1110. I can tell you personally that I have found a huge gap in trying to find tech trainers myself in the community that are tech trainers for hire, tech trainers that are offered at no charge. And I'm connected with a lot of people who are adults who are disabled. And when I say disabled, this means that they have a deficit. There's a severe portion, or I want to say a serious or severe, there's a portion of them that is permanently disabled. And that portion of them, oh my goodness, is that my time?
It was, but Pat, go ahead and finish.
There's an opportunity, since Boulder County has adopted the library district, to offer training for people with disabilities to also meet the new law. There are provisions within the law. People with disabilities don't come with instructions, they don't have training, and a lot of times they don't have jobs. Getting to that connection between the people with disabilities and the county, it would be outstanding. Boulder Reads program is a function of Boulder, what used to be the Boulder Public Library, but every contact I've had with them has, my conclusion was that we're not part of the county's ED&I mission statement, and we are therefore not low-hanging fruit.
Pat,
And we are.
Pat, I'm
included.
gonna have to break in and ask you to wrap up
Thank
now.
you.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
we'll.
I appreciate the time.
No, and I appreciate you raising this issue again on the accessibility of our website. You and I had a conversation about it, and you directed me to some resources on that, and we'll see what we can do to follow up. So thank you for that. Before I move to the last person that we have on our list to speak, we are also taking Q&A. We're going to ask that you write your questions though into the Q&A function, and then we'll do our best to answer them. It may be stump the commissioner night here, so we may not have answers to everything right away, but we will do our best to find answers to those questions if we can't answer them tonight. I also wanted to direct your attention in the chat to a link to the presentation that we made on the first day here of our new year. It's our State of the County, and you'll find that in the chat. You can see all the major priorities of each of our departments and the elected officials. It's an impressive list of projects that they'll be working on this year. So our last speaker this evening is Edward Yagi. I see Mr. Yagi on the screen. Go ahead, Mr. Yagi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Are my audio and video all right?
Yeah, they're great. Thanks.
Okay. I'm Edward Yagi, co-owner of Fifth Generation Family Property on Big Owl Road in Allens Park. 2 days ago, I was present in person at your hearing to discuss the two-year review of your current disastrous, unworkable, unenforceable, and arguably illegal short-term rental regulations. During your final comments, I and many others who were present or listening nearly fell over several times in disbelief and despair. Despite listening for 2.5 hours of talking, it was clear that you weren't really listening to what anyone was saying. I could list 20 examples. I have time now for just 4. You keep spouting nonsense about policy objectives long after it has been proved objectively again, and again that you have no policy objectives that have anything to do with short-term rentals in unincorporated Boulder County. None. Boulder County has about 150,000 homes. You have never defined what you are trying to accomplish by wasting millions of dollars over a period of decades to micromanage fewer than 200 private residences, many of which are old family summer homes way up in the mountains. What in the name of God are you trying to accomplish? How are you going to measure it? And what is the compelling public interest that didn't exist 5, 10, 15, 20, or 100 years ago? Either spell it out in black and white or stop babbling about unspecified, undefined, and unmeasured policy objectives. Next, keeping Wildfire Partners certification as part of the licensing process. Are you deaf? Are you blind? You said that you read the 2-year report, so are you lying? The public has proved repeatedly that Wildfire Partners was designed to be purely voluntary. Its standards are totally objective. In many cases, cost makes it impractical, and in many other cases, it is impossible. It can't be done at any price over any period of time because there is no one to do the work. Homeowner insurance is a purely private matter, and insurance is likewise impossible for many because no insurers exist. Also, legally, it's none of your business. Mandatory energy audits as a condition for short-term rental licenses? Are you joking? On what planet is that a priority? A year ago, more than 1,000 homes burned to the ground because you don't have coherent fire mitigation strategies. And if Boulder County is unaffordable, that's because of your zoning laws, your unaffordable property taxes because you waste millions on things like STR regulation, and because building costs in Boulder County are up to 3 times the national average. 3 times. Because of your over-the-top, unnecessary, and murderously expensive building regulations, including things like energy audits. So my question is simple and one I have asked before. Why don't you listen to facts? Why don't you read the evidence that taxpayers are feeding you at great expense of time and effort? Energy audits on a 90-year-old mountain cabin? Give me a break. This concludes my remarks.
Okay, thank you again for joining us this evening. So that's everybody that signed up to speak. And what we're going to do now is turn to the questions that have been submitted. We had 2 that were submitted. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Loachamin, did you want to speak now before we? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I was waiting to hear all the speakers before I kind of jumped in and comment. So I just wanted to respond to a few of those, if folks don't mind, and appreciate people participating. I do have a couple, follow-up questions, and we probably won't. It's a little hard virtually to bring people back so they can respond, but certainly if folks are still on, an email, commissioners@bouldercounty.org. If you want to reach out with some more information, curious about a couple of things. One, on the STR piece, we actually did in our dialogue and conversation, shared some of the same concerns that our last speaker shared. So, and that's in process, and we'll have an opportunity to come forward and really look at health and safety concerns, which is where I believe one of those initial goals was in regards to specifically properties in the mountains, and we continue to hear, and we've heard tonight from folks who really have some concerns about wildfire in our region. As well as the issue of housing inventory and what's also construed as housing affordability and discussed in different ways. I really appreciate, Pat, that suggestion around, because both Commissioner Levy and I are on the library district, and just the way that the formation and the timing of the formation of that group, to talk about how HB 21, I think it was 1110, how we can immerse that into the conversation and the work going forward. So really appreciate, those are the types of ideas that are really great, and it's very timely as we're going to have our first meeting at the beginning of February. The question about what's being added to the website is a great one that I'm happy to take back as our, we call it track. It's our technology review committee within the county, and ask that question. So those are great pieces and very helpful. I did have a couple questions on Pete Salas's comments, and would be curious to know, maybe in an email, about which meetings you were concerned about that are daytime meetings, because we do have, I believe we have right now 31 commissions and boards, which is a whole lot of different people volunteering with their expertises, as I mentioned when I was speaking. And I've attended some of those meetings, and those are evening meetings. So just curious if there's specific meetings that you were referring to and suggesting that we give opportunities outside of daytime. The contact information question, I think, is really important, and it's one that we had with our previous board, even for commissioners. I do believe there's just in that transparency and ability to quickly get to somebody, because I've had people trying to reach out to me and they have not been able to find my work information. So I brought that question up as well. one of the topics that I think you were talking about inadvertently was cultural brokers and the work that folks who are connected with their communities, whether it's specific to ethnicity or race or to mountain communities versus plains communities, those folks have a cultural understanding to be able to help with the work that's done on the ground. And we are and have been we're continuing to have that conversation about what that work might look like to allow our frontline staff, and as you talked about, the folks on the ground, be able to participate in different community meetings and community partners. The great news in 2022 was the opening of our Office of Racial Equity. And so we are also looking at how that new director who came in August of 2022 can lead some of those conversations as well. So I think we might actually be in the works of what I believe you're talking about, Pete. So thanks for that input. I did want to just, one of the comments from Megan, I just wanted to clarify, because we do have folks listening in regards to the funding on 1B. I'm really interested in that conversation and would love to have participation from UBC members with that committee, as I said, has not been put together yet in regards to 1B. But I want to clarify that the language in the ballot measure is really important. We really have to stick to that language because that's what voters voted for. And so the supplemental funding is for rural fire districts. So I just want to make sure that that's clear because we've had municipal governments and municipal departments ask if they might be able to receive the funding, and it was written very specifically for operational costs of rural fire districts. So wanted to just make that clarification in the conversation this evening. And the other comment was some of the pieces that Aaron and also saw your email, some of those questions that will be part of our response to, and the question about who's the designation of the leader of the group. We've seen that in several different emails from a variety of different folks. And we've been waiting a little bit in the interim of one commission to this new commission for this board to sit down and talk about some of those questions on 1B too. So just wanted to acknowledge some of those comments without reiterating, but add in the pieces that I wanted to clarify as well. So thank you.
Great. Yeah, thanks for taking some time to do that response right now. We've been seeing a couple of questions come in the chat, and we're not going to take them orally at this time so that we can optimize the amount of time that we have to respond to these questions. I do want to note it's 6:39, and we do want to wrap up and let everybody get on with their evening at 7 o'clock this evening. So I see Natalie here on the screen. Natalie is one of those miracle workers who's able to manage. She multitasks and keeps everything going. And she's been reviewing the questions for us so that we can devote our full attention to what you're saying. So Natalie, what's our first question?
Thank you so much, commissioners, and thank you to everyone for being here and who's putting questions in our Q&A feature. So our first question this evening, I will summarize for the board, but this is regarding the Township of El Dorado Springs as they navigate the upcoming changes ahead. So soon, the El Dorado Artisan Water Company will reopen their wonderful swimming pool after 3 years of construction at the whole site. It will not be easy on us residents. There is a very serious proposal we are learning of that will have residents paying to park at their own homes. This is unacceptable. There has got to be a way to stop the water company from this move.
Thank you so much. And so I'll take the first question and the other commissioners can correct me or fill in if I don't get it completely right. So our understanding is this is a really tough one because the roads in this area are privately owned. They're not county roads or public roads. And so this is one of those matters where you have two private property owners that dispute how the land is used. And so unfortunately, the very best thing that can happen when that happens, when you have two private entities that have a dispute, is to try to talk to one another. So Eldo Artesian Springs Incorporated is the best person to talk to you about the land they own. and see if you can come to consensus that works for both parties like you would with any other neighbor. You know, a lot of times elected officials try to help facilitate those conversations, but hopefully it can be resolved neighbor to neighbor. Unfortunately, in these private property disputes, also sometimes private property owners find themselves in a position where they need to get an attorney to represent their best interests. So I'm not an attorney, I can't give you legal advice, but this is a really tough one because these are not county facilities.
Perfect job there. I don't have anything to add other than to say that this has been a longstanding problem and concern. And El Dorado Springs is a unique place. And the fact that those roads are owned privately is something that has been a problem for a long, long time. So, Natalie, what's next in the queue?
Thank you, commissioners. Our next question is regarding the transportation sales tax. So now that the transportation sales tax extension has passed, can we look forward to the commissioners prioritizing a funding solution for subdivision paving in unincorporated Boulder County in 2023?
Okay, thank you. And I think because I was the quote unquote leader of that, at least the commissioner leader of that ballot measure, I'll go ahead and take that. And I did see in the chat, I think that was Liz Marr who was asking that question, and Liz has been a very constructive member of our subdivision paving sort of advisory committee and helping us work with the challenges of addressing the backlog of maintenance needed on county roads and subdivisions. The short answer is that we were not able with going forward with the 1 cent per $10 purchase extension. So extending just the existing level of funding that we already had, we weren't able to put subdivision paving in that budget. And we've had subsequent meetings with advocates for subdivision paving about looking at another ballot measure to do some additional funding so that there were other projects and services and goals that we had that we were hoping to get funding for if we were able to get enough support for a larger increment of sales tax. So there are other projects we'd like to do. And so we'll be testing public support for returning to the voters, and subdivision paving will be included in that. That's a commitment that the board did make to the advocates for subdivision paving. And but all we did this time was continue the level of funding that we already had, which is not adequate to address subdivision paving. So Liz, and I saw Peter King Smith in the attendance list. I look forward to working with you to see what we can do to get a good, strong coalition together to help us put this on the ballot and successfully pass it.
Thank you, Commissioner Levy. Our next question is coming from a new resident. They ask, can someone explain to me the House bill that Pat Claire spoke about vis-a-vis accessibility? She focused on training people with special physical accessibility needs, training them / us to do / know what specifically in regards to that bill.
Sure, I can jump in on that one. And I tried to put the link in there, but I may have put it in the wrong spot because it went away immediately. And so I think the question was answered, but I don't know how it's viewed on that other side. So, and I just went to the Colorado General Assembly and pulled up the bill. There's a couple different pieces, and probably just for transparency, the accessibility plan needs to be completed and turned into that main office by July 1st, 2024. I will say that we have continued to make our ADA transition plan a priority from a funding standpoint, as I talked about the budget earlier as well. But this particular HB 1110 is Colorado Laws for Persons with Disabilities. Anyone that's looking online for it, that might be an easy way to do it. And the prime sponsors were Representative David Ortiz and Senator Jesse Danielson, to give them credit where credit's due. This was specifically concerning adding language to relevant Colorado statutes related to persons with disabilities in the goal of strengthening protections against discrimination on the basis of disability, which is what the speaker earlier, Pat Clare, was talking about. So there's really three main points in there. One was prohibiting a person with a disability from being excluded from participating in or being denied the benefits of services, programs, or activities of a public entity or a state agency. And then again, that timeline of July 1st, 2024. And that has to include accessibility guidelines established by the Office of Information Technology. And the last one in there is that any Colorado agency with the authority to promulgate rules shall not do the same rule that provides less protection than that provided by the Americans with Disability Act of 1990. So that's the language of what's happening with it. I know our IT department's working on it because we saw a piece of that again in the budget that was approved by the previous board on December 7th. As far as what's going to be coming up first. So I think the question, and we've heard it a little bit from some of the other speakers, is how can we make that a transparent document? How can we make it accessible? I will share from my work with the Mobility and Access Coalition. We have great partnerships in Boulder County with folks who have been offered to be really helpful for us, even in that opening of the hearing room, who've offered to come look at the documents that we're using, look at the space, and ensure that what feels accessible to somebody like myself, who I don't have a physical disability, but I want to make sure, like, are we doing things in a way that really is working for folks who have disability, sight, physical disabilities, et cetera. And so that's one of the ways, again, that people can be involved in this process, and want to commend even Pat Clare for her previous work as a volunteer to the Commissioner's Office to really keep us educated, to keep asking the hard questions to make sure that we're doing work that meets all needs. So, and I can try and put that link in again if that's helpful for folks.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Our next question, Commissioners, I'll preface, I believe the person is talking about Everbridge. So let me read this to you. I think the last communication I had with the county 911 service is that it's being completely replaced at some point. One concern I have with it is that when you register, they should send a text to confirm that you are properly registered. Most companies do this. But after the Marshall fire, when I didn't get any phone contact on either my home phone, which was registered, or my cell phone, which was registered, I don't want this to happen again. I hope this is a requirement in the implementation of the new county system.
I'm happy to. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to jump in. We can go. I mean, this is the problem. If we were all together, one of us would have winked at somebody else and given a cue. And I'm happy to let you go ahead and do that, Commissioner Stolzmann.
I'll start, and then just please add in anything else you'd like to add. So hi, David, great to see you here. This is great because the Office of Emergency Management has been working on making improvements that they heard from communities since the disaster. And so a number of improvements have been implemented. City of Boulder led the way on some, and the Office of Emergency Management under the Sheriff's done others. And there are more improvements to come. So they've definitely heard the lack of distribution of messages, people concerned they had to sign up, people would prefer these new types of messages. So the system that is in place really will be more like an Amber Alert, where a broader amount of people will be getting messages. So the benefit of that is more people will be getting messages, and the detriment of that is sometimes you'll get messages that go a little beyond the area. So you may have a little bit of what feels like over alerting. Some families saw that with the most recent fire in December, where they got alerted and they kind of felt like, well, I'm not really in the area. So you need to read your message. And I want to reiterate a point that maybe I didn't come across saying exactly the way I had intended earlier. And that's that these systems are layered systems. There's no silver bullet here. when it comes to these emergencies. So like in our emergency with the Marshall Fire, cell phone towers burned down. And so even people who were registered did not get the notification because of the cellular signal that sends them out. And so if you lose cell service for everyone, it's going to create a problem. So there's backups. Police knock on doors, neighbors help neighbors, people look for warning signals and get out. And so we're always going to need to rely on those multiple layers. And it's never one perfect thing, but I am proud of the work the staff have done to make the system better and really respond to those resident concerns and make it more similar to an Amber Alert, make it more inclusive. So that we get the message out more frequently and can count on it better, but just never think that you can totally count on it. If you see, something that feels unsafe to you, if your house is on fire, you need to evacuate, so we always are going to have multiple systems in place. Thanks.
Yep, and I think all I would add on that is that, in response to the question about can there be some message back that verifies that you actually got registered. We can ask that of our Sheriff's Department, of our Office of Emergency Management, which manages that system. I don't know whether that's something that can just be programmed in, but I think that's a great suggestion. I know I've checked several times to make sure that my phone number is in the system. After every fire, I recheck and make sure that nothing happened and that it's still there. But I just want to also reiterate what Commissioner Stolzmann said about the multi-pronged approach, both on warnings and evacuations and on how we respond. A fire of that magnitude. We had firefighters coming from Frederick, from Firestone, from Littleton, from all over the metro area. And I learned a tremendous amount last Friday at the training we did on emergency management about the systems that are there to try to coordinate all these resources that are coming in. But you can imagine that this is happening very quickly under extreme circumstances, and it's hard to really get it to that well-oiled machine that we would like to have. That we know that our hardworking first responders train very hard to do. So it's something after every event like that, there's an after-action report. To sit down and look at what went well, what could have been done better, what resources do we need, and that Everbridge, the limitations of it, the fact that it is an opt-in was just a major problem. And so, as Commissioner Stolzmann said, we are moving to a system that does send it from the cell tower, and that's not going to be perfect either. So it's something, we came out of the Marshall Fire with 2 lives lost. That's 2 tragedies, but it could have been so much worse with a fire that was moving at that speed. I think I've been watching.
I'm just going to add in, jump in really quick too, if you don't mind. On that question, there's a couple pieces I just want to share from doing flood recovery work after 2013, and just by way of note, what else are we working on? We're still finishing the last pieces of the 2013 flood work, just to give folks an idea of the staff work that continues and will continue. In addition to the $33 million already spent by the county on Marshall Fire, our staff is continuing to do other work in recovery. But what I want to add in the conversation about emergency preparedness, disaster response and recovery is the opportunity that still exists in Boulder County for us to address multilingual, multicultural needs. That's something that we brought up in the Resiliencia para Todos, the Resiliency for All work that was done for DOLE at the city of Longmont, and the BOCC Strong, for folks who remember BOCC Strong, and we're partners with county and other organizations. The Better Together program, the Community Justice Collaborative is doing some of that work now in regards to trainings for climate preparedness and climate emergencies. So again, I will always give folks an opportunity. Where can I fit in? Where can I learn? Where can I get involved? And those are some of those because knowing your neighbor, being connected and really having an understanding of the map around you, meaning where your resources might be, where your food sources are, et cetera. Especially in communities like the city of Longmont, where we have such a significant amount of rental housing, a significant amount of apartments. Not everybody knows their neighbor because people are in and out of different lease terms, et cetera, which is different than perhaps other areas of the county that we hear from a lot, where folks have been there for 10, 15 years and they know their neighbors. And so those are some of the pieces of what can we do and how can we educate each other? How can we take care of each other? So just know that that work is also in process in regards to ways to respond and ways to be prepared.
Great, thank you for adding that. So I am going to help us close out this evening. I want to thank everybody for attending, for being interested in what your county government is doing. It's one of the least visible forms of government, and it's always nice to be able to share with the community all the great work we're doing. I also wanted to just remind those of you who are still with us that on the first Thursday of the month at 10:30, we are available either in person or virtually for public comment, 3 minutes, and the link to sign up for that is always noted on our advanced agenda, which you can find on our website. Because that's 10:30 in the morning, and it is many people's work day, and as Pete was pointing out, it's hard for many people to get in front of us. That was one reason we initiated these town halls, because we know that we need to be available at different times. The screen now has the dates for our next 2 town halls. They will both be virtual, February 9th and March 16th. So look for upcoming announcements for what the topics will be. We've tried to cover topics of interest so that we can focus and have our expert staff there to field questions. So we'll be addressing what those will be in the future. And I think the last thing I want to say to wrap us up here by 7 o'clock is again to thank our staff for all the work they do behind the scenes to make these things happen, to make them happen effectively and efficiently. Barb Halpin, Natalie Springett, Jen Churchill are primarily responsible for putting on these town halls, and they do put a lot of time into that, and they help us in so many other ways. So thank you all, thank you staff, thank you commissioners for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with the community, and we'll look forward to seeing as many of you as possible on February 9th, and please follow up commissioners at bouldercounty.org if there are additional questions that we didn't get to, or if you want to communicate with us about anything else. So thank you and good night.